There's a place in the Himalayas where hundreds of faces lie beneath the snow, frozen, silent, waiting. Who they were, science doesn't know. Why they went there, history doesn't know. And why they never returned, this question still floats in the air. What you're about to see now isn't in any book. It wasn't taught in any school. No government told it. This is the truth. That was buried beneath the snow for 1,200 years. And today, for the first time, it's coming out.
There are places that pull you toward them, without reason, without invitation, like an invisible thread, like a voice, one that isn't heard by the ears, but felt directly by the soul. Roopkund is one of those places. At an altitude of more than 5,000 meters, where the air is thin, where breathing becomes a struggle, where even sunlight feels cold, there is a lake. And at the bottom of that lake, along its shores, beneath its ice, lie hundreds of human bones. This was no battlefield. No epidemic had spread here. No volcano had erupted. And yet, hundreds of people, in one place, dead. And when scientists examined these bones, what emerged silenced historians across the entire world. Because this was not simply one mystery, it was one inside another inside a third, layers upon layers, a puzzle that grows more tangled the closer it gets to being solved. Stop. Hold your breath for just a moment, because we are about to walk a path from which very few have returned, and those who did came back changed. This is not merely the story of a lake. This is the story of a fracture in time, where the past and the present collide, where science and mystery stare into each other's eyes, and both flinch. Uttarakhand, that land of the Himalayas which has been called Devbhumi, the land of the gods, for centuries. The mountains here are not merely stone. The rivers here are not merely water. There is something in the air, something that can be felt but never fully described. In the Chamoli district, beneath the vast shadow of Nanda Devi, a path winds through forests, crosses glaciers, tears through clouds, climbing ever upward. And at the end of that path, Roopkund. In the summer months, when the Himalayan ice softens slightly, something strange happens at the edges of the lake. The ice melts, and with it, bones rise to the surface. Human skulls, the bones of hands and feet, remnants of skin, fragments of woolen garments, wooden tools, metal ornaments. As though the earth itself is expelling everything it had hidden within itself for centuries. 1942, the era of the Second World War. A British forest officer, H.K. Madwal, was on patrol in the area. When he first saw those bones along the shore of Roopkund, his blood ran cold. He immediately filed a report. The British government mobilized. The first assumption was, perhaps these were the bodies of Japanese soldiers, killed while attempting to cross the mountains. But the moment the investigation began, that assumption crumbled entirely. These bones did not belong to any soldier. They were not remnants of any recent event. The very first test made it clear these remains were not hundreds but thousands of years old. And then came radiocarbon dating. The result, most of the skeletons dated to the 9th century, that is, approximately 1,200 years before the present day. But this was only the first layer. The true mystery still lay ahead. At the close of the 20th century and the dawn of the 21st, when modern science examined these bones with greater depth, a fact emerged that shook the entire world. Among these skeletons, there were 3 completely distinct genetic groups. The first, South Asian, most likely pilgrims from the Indian subcontinent. The second, East Asian in origin, possibly from the regions of Nepal or Tibet. And the third, the one that left everyone speechless, Mediterranean European. The Mediterranean, that sea which touches Europe, Africa, and Asia. That civilization which gave birth to Greece, Rome, and Crete. The bones of those people, in this solitary, inaccessible, frozen lake in the Himalayas, in the 9th century, with no known land route, with no recorded journey in any historical document. How is this possible? And if you are thinking perhaps this was some kind of error, then an international study published in 2019 in Nature Communications confirmed it beyond all doubt. DNA analysis of more than 300 skeletons, the world's most advanced genetic laboratories, scientists from multiple nations, and the result, the same. 3 groups, 3 continents, 1 lake. But this study revealed something else, something no one had considered before. Those Mediterranean skeletons, which had previously been assumed to be part of a single event, had in fact died several hundred years after the other groups, which means this was not one tragedy, but many, at different times, to different people. Roopkund called death again and again, and every time, no one returned. Close your eyes for just a moment. Picture it. A night scene from the 9th century, that Himalayan peak, stars in the sky like thousands of lit lamps, a caravan of hundreds, exhausted but filled with anticipation. They are on a pilgrimage to Nanda Devi. With them are royal garments, musicians, dancers, a king and his pregnant queen. And then, the sky changes. Local folktales, passed down through generations by word of mouth, describe this event in a very different way. They say, Nanda Devi grew enraged. Within that caravan were jesters and dancers who were forbidden on the goddess's sacred ground. Such an affront, entertainment in the place of devotion, the goddess could not endure. Hailstones fell from the sky, so large, so lethal, so sudden, that not a single person could flee. And here, science and mythology meet at a single point. When forensic experts examined the skulls, they found deep circular wounds struck from directly above. These wounds were not from any weapon, not from any animal. They could only have come from one thing, a hard round object falling from above. Hailstones. Consider how extraordinary this is. A folktale 1,000 years old, and modern forensic science, both arriving at the same truth. Is this mere coincidence? Or is it evidence that our ancestors possessed a kind of memory, a precision, that we have never been able to fully understand? But beyond the folktale, there is another question, one that cuts even deeper. Those hundreds of people, whose skulls bore wounds from above, why did they not run? When the hailstones began to fall, did they not realize what was happening? Were they so exhausted they could not move? Were they in some altered mental state and in meditation and ritual that they offered no resistance whatsoever? Or, and this is the most terrifying possibility of all, did they choose to accept death? There is yet another mystery here, one that rarely enters the conversation. The objects found at Roopkund were not those of ordinary travelers. Gold and silver ornaments, intricately crafted bangles, remnants of silk garments, and, strangest of all, certain tools that had no clear connection to any pilgrimage. Was this a pilgrimage or a ritual? And if a ritual, then for whom? What was asked for in that ritual? And what was received? If you are still with us, if this mystery is shaking you from within, then write in the comments right now, Roopkund. Because those who reach this truth are never quite the same as they were before, and we want to keep bringing mysteries like this one to you. Now let us move toward the aspect of this story that may be its darkest corner of all. The Mediterranean skeletons. They were here. DNA proved it. But how? In the 9th century, when they died, there was no known overland route between India and Europe that passed through this region. There was maritime trade through the Arab world. There was the Silk Road through Central Asia. But to this remote corner of Uttarakhand, some researchers put forward a startling hypothesis. Were these people members of a secret sect? A group drawn from different corners of the world yet following the same knowledge? In the ancient world, such sects existed, operating beyond the boundaries of nations, followers not of any country, but of a single truth. Was Roopkund the gateway to that truth? And was the price of opening that gateway life itself? There is something about the Himalayas that few people know. Beneath this land run currents of energy that even modern geologists have not fully understood. The most mysterious places on Earth, Stonehenge, Giza, Machu Picchu, all sit upon a geological alignment that some scientists call ley lines. And those who study these lines claim that Roopkund, too, lies upon one of these powerful currents. Is this why this place has drawn so many different people, again and again, across so many different eras? And if we go deeper still, in ancient Indian texts, in the Tantra Shastra, in the esoteric writings of yoga, there is mention of places called Shakti Pithas. These are locations where the goddess's power manifests upon the earth, where the wall between the ordinary and the extraordinary is at its thinnest. Roopkund, could it rest upon an unacknowledged Shakti Pitha? Is this why every person who comes here, whether Indian or European, encounters some invisible force? It is necessary to pause here for a moment, because what we are witnessing at Roopkund today is not an isolated event. Beneath the soil of India, within its mountains, its temples, its ancient manuscripts, there is a knowledge that was deliberately suppressed, removed from history books, dismissed as mythology, but that knowledge was never erased. Forbidden Secrets of India, Lost Technology of the Gods. This ebook lifts the layers of that buried knowledge, the technology, the science, the power of ancient India, what was called the inheritance of the gods. If Roopkund has awakened questions in your mind, this ebook is the first step toward finding their direction. The link is in the description of this video. Look at it now. Let us return to the mystery, the part that has not yet fully opened. The 2019 Nature Communications report revealed one more staggering fact. The Mediterranean skeletons, previously believed to be from the 9th century, some of them dated to between the 17th and 20th centuries. That means during the Mughal era, during the British era, in a time when the map of the world was being redrawn. Why were European people on this Himalayan peak during that period? Who was there? And why did none of them ever return? Nothing is recorded in history, no diary, no letter, no report, as though they went and the earth swallowed them whole, and perhaps that is the truth. Roopkund swallowed them, as it had swallowed those Indian pilgrims centuries before, as it had swallowed those East Asian travelers. This lake is a tomb, but whose and who built it remains unanswered to this day. Now one more layer. Among the skeletons at Roopkund, there were some that showed no signs of injury whatsoever. They did not die from hailstones. So how did they die? Some scientists say hypothermia, extreme cold. But some say something else, something that appears far less often in the official record. The position of those skeletons, the manner in which they were found, did not suggest sudden death. It suggested something slower, something voluntary, as though they had lain down, as though they had chosen to remain there. Is it possible that Roopkund was a place where people came to die? Deliberately, with conviction, with purpose. In the ancient world, and not only in India, but in Greece, in Egypt, in Celtic Europe, there were traditions in which certain chosen individuals would travel to a sacred place and end their lives there, in the belief that this was not death, but the beginning of a journey. Was Roopkund that gateway, the one that different cultures across the world spoke of in the same breath? Among the local communities of the Himalayas, those who still live in that region, there is a belief. They say, at night, voices are heard at Roopkund. Not the sound of water, not the sound of wind. Human voices in no recognizable language, or perhaps in a language that is no longer spoken anywhere on earth. Some local priests, devotees of Nanda Devi, still refuse to go there. They say, what the lake has taken, it has never returned. And what was never returned is still there. Even in the modern era, Roopkund has kept its secret intact. Many trekkers who went there have spoken of strange experiences. Sudden disorientation, losing all sense of direction, the feeling of being followed by something unseen. A German mountaineer, whose name is on record, described a single night there in 2003. He wrote, "I felt as though the lake was speaking to me, as though it wanted me to come closer. I do not know how I stopped myself." He came back. Very few have. And most of those who did said they were not the same person who had gone. Something had changed, inside, as though someone had opened something in their mind or closed something that could never be reopened. Roopkund is not merely a physical location. It is an experience, one that cannot be put into words. And now, the largest question of all. Scientists gave us DNA, forensic experts gave us wound patterns, radiocarbon dating gave us dates. But no one has explained how those Mediterranean people got there, who showed them the way, who called them, and why, 1,200 years later, the lake is still expelling them, as though it wants to tell the world their story, as though the account of their deaths is still unsettled. Roopkund today is a trekking destination. Every year, thousands of people go there, take photographs, shoot videos. But beneath the stones they walk on, there are bones. In the water they dip their hands into, centuries of death are dissolved. In the air they breathe, are the final breaths of countless unknown travelers. Do they truly know where they are standing? Some truths are so immense that accepting them requires a different kind of courage. Roopkund is one of those truths. It tells us that the world is not as simple as we were taught, that history holds chapters which were never written or which were deliberately erased, that within these Himalayan peaks, which we regard as nothing more than stone and ice, there is a knowledge we have never truly tried to understand. And perhaps this is Roopkund's real message. Those hundreds of people who died there were searching for some truth. They reached an altitude where ordinary human beings do not go. They paid the price with their lives, and they remain beneath that lake to this day, frozen in the ice, silent, yet speaking. Every time the ice melts, they come a little further out, a little closer, as though saying, "We are here. Hear our story, solve our mystery." But are we ready to listen? Are we ready to face the truth that this mystery is trying to show us? The answer to Roopkund may never come, or perhaps that answer already lives within us. We only need to reach the altitude where the ice melts. And when it melts, the truth emerges. If this mystery has shaken you, if you want to know what other secrets lie buried within the soil of India, then subscribe to Virasat, Bharat ki Kahaniyan right now, and like this video so that this truth reaches those who are still in the dark. Every week we bring you mysteries that history buried, that science could not solve, that power concealed. And if you want to know the ancient suppressed knowledge of India, look at the link in the description. Forbidden Secrets of India, Lost Technology of the Gods. This is not simply an ebook. It is the door, the one you will never look away from once it is opened. The ice of Roopkund will keep melting, and it will keep expelling its secrets. The question is, are you ready to be part of that mystery?